The envelope arrived without a return address, smudged at the edges as though it had crossed oceans on foot. Rohan found it between a photocopy of a 17th-century farman and a crumpled flyer for a campus rally, all three splayed across his office threshold like the aftermath of a small paper landslide. He bent, picked it up, and immediately noticed the handwriting, a spidery, old-fashioned script in ink that had bled a little into the paper. The postmark said, Delhi GPO. His pulse ticked up a notch. He sat at his desk, nudging aside a mug ringed with dried chai, and slit the envelope open with the edge of a library card. A faint, unfamiliar smell rose, something between camphor and damp wood. Inside was a single sheet of ivory paper, folded twice. At the top, in elegant English that nevertheless betrayed the cadences of another language, someone had written, Khurana Antiquarian and Rare Books, Daryaganj, Delhi, 110002. Daryaganj, he murmured. The old book district, he read on. Dear Professor Malhotra, I hope you will forgive the boldness of this letter. Your work on the Hindi discourses associated with Dara Shikoh and the saint, some call Baba Lal, has reached even my small shop in Old Delhi. A young scholar at Jawaharlal Nehru University showed me your book, Crossed Tongues, Hindi-Persian Dialogues in the Mughal Age, and suggested that you are the only person I should contact with what I have found. To be direct, I believe I have acquired a manuscript of the 9th dialogue between Baba Lal and Dara Shikoh. Rohan's eyes stopped there, his breath frozen halfway in his chest. 8 dialogues were all that the tradition admitted to. 8, recorded and recopied and argued over for centuries. Some in Hindi, some in Persian, some in hybrid prose that seemed to stand in 2 worlds at once. 8, that a handful of scholars had built careers on. And a 9th that was rumored, implied, hypothesized, but never in all the archives Rohan had burrowed into, seen. He forced himself to continue reading. The manuscript is in Hindi, written in a hand I am not qualified to date. The colophon, however, explicitly uses the phrase Nauvan Guftagu and speaks of a meeting in 1067 AH. I have dealt in books all my life, Professor, but my knowledge is a merchant's, not a scholar's. I lack the authority to authenticate or condemn such a thing. Moreover, I am under some pressure from certain collectors to sell quickly. My instinct warns me to be cautious. My mind tells me that only someone learned in this particular history can guide me. I know from a notice in the Bookman that you are scheduled to speak at the Indo-Persian Studies Conference in Agra in 2 weeks' time. If you could spare a day in Delhi before or after your conference, I would be honored to show you the manuscript. Your guidance would not be without material gratitude. With respect and hope, Arvind Khurana. Proprietor, the signature looped across the bottom of the page, black ink thinning where the nib had run dry. Rohan leaned back, staring at the words, the beating of his heart suddenly too loud in the hushed office. Nauvan Guftagu, he said aloud. You have got to be kidding me. On the shelf behind him, 3 monographs tilted at precarious angles. His own book, with its sober khaki jacket, perched among them. Chapter 2. The Case of the Missing 9th Dialogue. He remembered writing that chapter, remembered the thrill of finding a single stray reference in a Persian chronicle to another conversation, lost to the vicissitudes of war. He'd built an argument that the very absence of the 9th dialogue had shaped the way later readers imagined Dara Shikoh's syncretism. Absence as presence, silence as text. Now some bookseller in Daryaganj claimed to be holding the thing in his hands. He read the letter twice more, looking for the telltale signs of a crank or a hoax. Overblown claims, no. Allusions to secret treasure maps, not a one. The tone hovered between deference and urgency, and he had indeed agreed to go to Agra to keynote a conference on inter-religious dialogue in early modern South Asia. His flight was booked, Chicago to Delhi, Delhi to Agra by train. He'd even made a note to stop by the Daryaganj Book Bazaar on Sunday to dig for obscure pamphlets. He had not imagined the bazaar would reach out to him first. He set the letter down, face up on the desk, and stared at it until the words blurred. The 9th dialogue. How many times, he asked the empty office, do you get to be wrong and right at the same time? His office door was open. A graduate student passing by poked her head in. Professor Malhotra, you okay? He blinked. Yes, of course, just... He gestured helplessly at the letter. India, he said, and she smiled. India will do that to you. 1. Arrival. 2 weeks later, after 14 hours of recycled air and the particular purgatory that was Heathrow's Terminal 3, Rohan stepped out of Indira Gandhi International Airport into a wall of heat and honking. Delhi in March was a city freshly pulled from storage. The winter smog had thinned. The sun had not yet become the tyrant it would be in May. The air carried dust, exhaust, and, faintly, mercifully, jasmine. He checked into a business hotel in Connaught Place, dropped his bags, showered, and stared at himself in the mirror. In Chicago, people sometimes took him for a particularly young senior professor, old in attitude if not in years. His hair was threaded with early grey, his beard trimmed close. Here, in the harsh bathroom light, he just looked tired. He dressed in a light kurta and chinos, slipped the book dealer's letter into the inside pocket of his jacket, and told the concierge he needed a cab to Daryaganj. Sunday, the young man behind the desk said. Best day for books, sir. You're lucky. I hope so, Rohan said. The cabbie, a lean man with sunburned forearms, took one look at the address and grinned. Khurana Ji's shop, Han. You know it? In Daryaganj, everyone knows everyone. He merged into the traffic with the casual fatalism of the experienced Delhi driver. Old shop. His father's time also it was there. Very good Urdu books. The city streamed by, flyovers overgrown with political posters, metro pillars marching like mute giants, glimpses of wide Lutyens avenues giving way abruptly to narrow lanes choked with scooters and cows. When they turned onto Netaji Subhash Marg, the air changed. The wide road ran between crumbling facades and rows of stalls. Books spilled from carts and tarpaulin-covered tables. School textbooks, pirated bestsellers, devotional pamphlets. The cab stopped beside a lane. Here, the driver said. You will have to walk inside. Rohan paid him, stepped out and let the street swallow him. Vendors called out prices. Children darted between stacks of books, trailing laughter. A man with a white beard and thick glasses sat cross-legged on a mat, carefully wrapping a volume in newspaper. He followed the printed address through a narrow alley lined with shuttered shops, until he found a wooden sign painted in flaking gold. Khurana Antiquarian and Rare Books. Established 1946. The glass door beneath it was clouded with age. A small bell tinkled as he pushed it open. Inside, the shop was cool and dim. Shelves rose to the ceiling, bowed with the weight of books. Paper dust danced in slender beams of light cutting through the gloom. A ceiling fan turned slowly above, pushing warm air around. At the back of the shop, behind a glass counter, a man looked up. He was in his late 50s, Rohan guessed, with a clean-shaven face and a mass of white hair combed back from a high forehead. His kurta was crisply ironed, but his spectacles sat askew on his nose. Professor Malhotra, the man said. His voice was soft but carried. You look exactly as I imagined. Please, come. He came out from behind the counter with quick, bird-like steps and clasped Rohan's hand in both of his. Mr. Khurana? Rohan said. Arvind, please. Mr. is for people who buy coffee table books for decoration. We, here, are in the business of ghosts. He smiled. You must be exhausted. A little, Rohan admitted, taking in the shop. The curses of the street outside faded, replaced by the rustle of pages. But this is worth it. Let me get you some chai. Khurana turned his head. Amit, chai for our guest. A young man unfolded himself from a stool behind a stack of boxes. Skinny, bespectacled, his hair pulled back in a stubby ponytail. Yes, uncle, he said, and vanished through a curtain at the back. Sit! Sit! Khurana gestured to a worn armchair near the counter. It was patched in places with duct tape. As Rohan sat, something crinkled under him. He shifted and unearthed a glossy catalogue for a London auction house. The cover showed a jewelled Mughal dagger. "Oh, that is not the sort of thing that interests us," Khurana said quickly, taking the catalogue and tossing it onto a stack. "Jewels and swords. The real treasure is always ink." "That's not what some collectors would say," Rohan said. "Collectors," Khurana said with a curl of his lip, "are a species better categorized under neurosis than under love." He glanced at Rohan. "Forgive me. You work, I am told, with some very rich Western libraries." "Libraries," Rohan said, "are different. They share." "Sometimes," Khurana conceded. His eyes, though, were not on Rohan's face. They were on his pocket. "You have my letter?" Rohan drew it out and smoothed it on his knee. "I do. And you have—" He let the sentence hang. Khurana's fingers twitched. For a moment his confident mask slipped, revealing something tense underneath, something wary. "I have something," he said. "Whether it is what it claims to be, we shall see." Amit reappeared with a steel tray bearing 2 small glasses of chai, steam curling from them. As he set them down, he peered at Rohan with undisguised curiosity. "So you are the one who wrote that book about Dara Shikoh," he said. His Hindi was crisp, educated. "Our professor at JNU made us all read it." "I'm sorry," Rohan said automatically. Amit grinned. "It was better than some of the others." "Thank you," Rohan said. "You study history?" "Modern history," Amit said, "which ends, according to my professors, right before anything that might embarrass anyone still alive." Khurana clicked his tongue. "Amit thinks history is a tool for revolution," he said. "He is too young to understand that sometimes history is a refuge." "Refuge for whom?" Amit muttered, but he didn't push it. He hovered as Khurana reached under the glass counter, turned a brass key with deliberate ceremony, and drew out a flat-wrapped bundle. He laid it on the counter as though placing a child in a crib. "The last time I had something like this in the shop," he said quietly. "The year was 1984. It was a Persian manuscript of the Majma-ul-Bahrain. Within days, a gentleman from a certain ministry came and explained that it would be better if I sold it to the National Archives for a token sum, rather than to a private collector abroad for a real price. I did not argue. Times were dangerous." Rohan remembered 1984. He'd been a child in Lucknow, hearing about Delhi in whispers and news fragments, sensing fear that seeped even into his schoolyard. He could see those ghosts in Khurana's eyes now. "These days," Khurana continued, "no one bothers about manuscripts. They bother about WhatsApp messages." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Still, my instincts are not entirely dead. I thought, when I saw this, that it should be seen by someone who actually reads what he touches." He unwound the cotton cloth. The manuscript beneath was modest, a slim codex, perhaps 30 folios, bound in darkened leather whose decorated edges had worn away in patches. The cover bore no title. The pages, visible at the edges, were the color of old bone. Rohan's mouth went dry. He set his glass down with exaggerated care and reached out. His hands, he noted distantly, were steady. "May I?" "Please," Khurana said. Rohan opened the codex. The first folio was blank, aside from a faint marginal note in a later hand. The next bore the invocation. "In the name of the One, the Merciful, the Compassionate," written in an archaic Nastaliq, but with a slightly uncertain ductus. Below it, in careful Devanagari, Navam Samvada, the 9th dialogue. He could feel Amit's gaze on the side of his face, burning. He turned the page. The Hindi was written in a 17th century hand, as far as his first glance could tell. The characteristic long loops on the ra, the occasional Persian loanword dropped in without fanfare. The text was formatted as a dialogue between Shahzada Dara and Mahatma Baba Lal. The first lines were familiar, echoes of the known dialogues, but twisted just enough to make his skin prickle. Dara said, "O Baba, you have shown me 8 paths in which the sea of oneness washes the shores of many names. Tell me now of the 9th, which is neither path nor shore." Rohan's vision tunneled. The words marks on the page seemed to pulse. "Professor?" Amit said softly. "Is it?" Rohan exhaled, a long, slow breath. "It is something," he said. His voice came out hoarse. "I can tell you that much." He forced himself to detach, to become the dispassionate reader he had trained to be. He flipped ahead. The paper bore faint chain lines, spaced irregularly. The ink had browned slightly with age. There were water stains along the inner margins, as though the book had survived a flood or been carried in damp cloth. The colophon, on the final folio, gave a Hijri date that corresponded roughly to 1657 or 1658. "May I take some photographs?" he asked. Khurana hesitated. "I would prefer that no images leave this shop until you know what it is you're selling," Rohan finished. "Fair enough." He glanced around. "Do you have a quiet place where I can sit with it for a few hours? I flew in this morning. It's not ideal, but I can at least do a preliminary examination." Khurana nodded. "We have a small room upstairs. It is usually for storage, but a chair and table are there. Amit will bring you more chai, and perhaps something to eat. You academics forget such things exist." "I would appreciate it," Rohan said. As he gathered the manuscript into his hands, a movement near the door caught his eye. A man stood there, half inside, half out, as if undecided whether to enter. He wore a simple white kurta pajama, but his hair was slicked back with something shiny, and there was a restlessness in his stance that reminded Rohan of men on trading floors. When he saw the manuscript in Rohan's hands, the man's eyes narrowed. "Arvindji," he called, in a voice that tried for casual and failed. "I came to see you." "I am with a guest, Mr. Saxena," Khurana said, and there was a stiffness in his tone that had not been there before. "Perhaps later." The man's gaze flicked from Khurana to Rohan, to the codex. His jaw tightened. "I've come from far," he said. "We had an understanding." "We had," Khurana said evenly. "A conversation, not an understanding. I am busy." The silence between them crackled. Rohan felt, rather than saw, Amit move slightly closer, his posture protective. Mr. Saxena considered the scene for one heartbeat, two, then smiled. It was the sort of smile that never reached the eyes. Of course," he said. "Later, then. I'll call." He stepped back, the bell over the door tinkling faintly as it closed behind him. Rohan looked at Khurana. "A collector?" he asked. "A middleman," Khurana said. "A broker. The kind of man who thinks books are chips in a game of cards. Please, Professor. Upstairs." 2. Textual ghosts. The upstairs room was small and windowless, lined with shelves stacked with cardboard boxes labeled in neat handwriting. Urdu poetry, colonial pamphlets, devotional tracts, c. 1900. A battered wooden table sat in the middle, flanked by two mismatched chairs. A single tube light hummed overhead. Amit placed the manuscript on the table with exaggerated care, as though aware that every movement might be part of a future legend. "I'll bring tea," he said, "and samosas. Uncle has a friend downstairs who makes them. The oil is questionable, but the taste isn't." "Thank you," Rohan said. When Amit left, Rohan was alone with the book. He opened his notebook. His pen hovered over the page for a moment, then wrote in neat script, "Khurana MS, putative ninth dialogue, preliminary observations." He began with the physical object. Paper, handmade, with visible fibers, slight gloss, inconsistent thickness. Watermarks? None obvious? He would need better light. Binding, likely 19th century, possibly a rebinding of older quires. The sewing stations looked relatively recent. Ink, iron gall, now browned. Script, early Devanagari, but with some features suggesting later imitation. He felt the analytic part of his mind wake fully, like a machine whirring to life. He turned to the text itself. At first it was unnervingly convincing. The opening exchange mirrored, almost perfectly, a passage from the third dialogue, but then swerved into new territory. Baba Lal asking Dara not only about Sufi metaphysics, but about the political responsibilities of a prince who claimed to see unity in all things. Dara replying in a voice that sounded, dangerously, like later hagiography. Rohan made a note. Suspiciously modern concern, or confirmation of intuition that Dara's metaphysics were always political? He flipped ahead. Something snagged his eye. The spelling of a Persian loanword, marifat, rendered in Nagari in a way that echoed a scribal convention from the early 18th century, not the mid-17th. He murmured. On another page, the scribe had written ishq instead of ishq, dropping the tail, a common oral rendering, but rare on paper before a certain period. The honorific Hazrat appeared once, applied to Baba Lal. Rohan could not recall that honorific being used in the earliest sources. He made more notes. Amit slipped in quietly with a tray of chai and samosas. Rohan barely noticed. "You're frowning," Amit said. "I am thinking," Rohan said. "It's my only marketable skill." Amit perched on the edge of a box. "Is it fake?" Rohan tapped his pen against the notebook. "That," he said, "is a little like asking, is this person a liar? The answer depends on what you mean by fake and by liar." "I mean," Amit said patiently, "do we have a 17th century manuscript of a text composed in Dara Shikoh's circle? Or do we have something else pretending to be that?" "We have," Rohan said slowly, "an object that has clearly had a life. This paper is old. These stains are old. The binding is newer, but that's common enough. The script imitates 17th century features, but perhaps a little too carefully." He turned a page. "Look here. The scribe has copied out an Upanishadic quotation, but in a version that matches a printed edition from the late 19th century, rather than the known manuscripts Dara's circle used." Amit's eyes lit. So the scribe was working from printed sources? Perhaps. Or from a later manuscript that itself was influenced by printed norms. Rohan sat back. "You see my problem. I can't simply say authentic or forgery as if those are clean categories. This could be a 19th century attempt to reconstruct a 17th century dialogue, or a deliberate hoax, or a devotional pious fraud by someone who genuinely believed Dara and Baba Lal must have said these things." Amit chewed greedily on a samosa, then wiped his fingers on his jeans. "Uncle will have to decide what to tell Mr. Saxena and whoever is behind him. They will want certainty. Rich people always do." "Then rich people," Rohan said, "are emotionally unsuited to history." Amit snorted. Rohan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, an email from the conference organizers in Agra reminding speakers of the schedule. His panel on textual afterlives was in 3 days. He looked at the manuscript again, the inked dialogue between a dead prince and a dead ascetic. "I could spend months on this," he said softly. "Years." "You have," Amit said. 3 more hours before Uncle starts pacing downstairs like an expectant father." "Then," Rohan said, "I'd better use them." He reached again for the text. Somewhere later, as he was tracing the arc of an argument about the oneness of being, his eye caught a slip, a particular formation of the consonant na, with a tiny downward tick that he had seen before in a completely different context. It nagged at him, just out of reach, like a word on the tip of the tongue. He flipped to the colophon. The scribe named himself boastfully as Lala Banwari Das, humble servant of the prince. It was a name Rohan had never seen in the archival record. He made a note. Unknown scribe. Suspicious. By the time Khurana knocked on the door, Rohan's notebook contained a dense thicket of observations, and his brain hummed with conflicting impressions. "Well?" Khurana asked, standing in the doorway. His face was composed, but his hands twisted the edge of his kurta. "Well," Rohan said, carefully closing the codex, "I can say some things with confidence and others not at all." Khurana raised his eyebrows. "That sounds very much like a professor." Rohan smiled despite himself. "The manuscript itself is old. The paper and ink predate the 20th century at least. The binding is probably 150 years old. The text is complicated." "Complicated how?" It draws heavily on the known 8 dialogues. There are phrases lifted almost verbatim from them. There are also structures, ideas that echo other writings from Dara's circle. But there are anomalies, spellings that suggest a later date, quotations that only appear in editions printed much later, a scribe who names himself but whom no other source mentions. Khurana absorbed this silently. "And the colophon date?" he asked. "Could someone have adjusted it?" "The date is written in the same ink and hand as the rest," Rohan said. "If it's manipulated, it was manipulated early. My tentative hypothesis is that this is not a 17th century autograph of the 9th dialogue. It might be a 19th century reconstruction or fabrication by someone with access to multiple traditions. It might yet contain authentic fragments. But if a museum or library asked me whether to catalogue it as Dara Shikoh's 9th dialogue, I would advise caution." He expected disappointment, perhaps anger. Instead, Khurana's shoulders seemed to loosen. "Good," he said. Rohan blinked. "Good? Good that it is not simple. If you had told me, 'Yes, Mr. Khurana, this is certainly written by Dara's court scribes in 1658, then I would have thought I was in a fairy tale. Real manuscripts are like real people. They are full of compromises." He smiled thinly. "And lies." "There is still more I could do," Rohan said. "Ink analysis, comparison with digital surrogates of other manuscripts. But that would take time, and access to equipment I don't have in my hotel room." "You have given me already more than most," Khurana said. "The men pressuring me to sell would not care about your analysis. They want a story. They want a certificate." "And you?" Rohan asked. "I," Khurana said, "want to stay alive." The words hung in the air. Rohan frowned. "Do you believe you are in danger?" Khurana looked at him for a long moment. "Professor," he said softly, "you spend your days with dead princes. I spend mine with living jackals. There is a man behind Mr. Saxena, a man who likes to buy things no one else can have. He has offered a sum for this manuscript that would, frankly, solve my retirement. He has also indicated that refusal would be unwise." "Who is he?" Rohan asked. "A name," Khurana said. "A shadow. He calls himself Rao. That is all." He shook his head. "I have been in this trade long enough to know that some customers you should never meet." "Yet you wrote to me," Rohan said. "Why?" "Because," Khurana said, "if I am to risk my life, I would like to know precisely for what. For what kind of lie or what kind of truth. And because an old man is allowed one last act of foolishness. If your letter had come back undeliverable, I would have taken that as a sign from above and sold the damn thing, prayed for my soul later. But here you are." He spread his hands. "So perhaps the gods are bored and want entertainment." "How soon do you need to decide?" Rohan asked. "Rao's man will come tomorrow," Khurana said. "He will want an answer. If I tell him I'm still waiting on a scholar's opinion, he will laugh. If I tell him you have declared it questionable, he will either withdraw his offer or lower it insultingly." He shook his head. "I do not know which is worse." Silence settled between them like dust. "I can come back tomorrow," Rohan said finally. "After I've slept. Fresh eyes may notice what jet-lagged ones didn't. And perhaps we can talk again about options. There may be institutions that would be interested, even in a problematic manuscript." "You will be going to Agra?" "The day after tomorrow," Rohan said. "The conference begins then." Khurana nodded slowly. "Come in the morning then, early, before the bazaar wakes fully." He glanced at the manuscript, lying between them, as if it might hear. "And, Professor," he said, "do not tell anyone else about this. Not yet. The smell of money travels faster than cars in this city." "I understand," Rohan said. As he left the shop, the late afternoon sun hit his face like a warm slap. The sounds of Daryaganj, vendors hawking, children shouting, auto rickshaws honking in strange semaphore, crashed over him. He looked back once. In the window of Khurana's shop, amid the faded spines, he thought he saw a movement, someone watching. A reflection caught the light. Glasses, a glint of metal. When he blinked, it was gone. 3. The body. He slept badly. Back in his hotel room, he tried to jot down his impressions, but the words blurred. Every time he closed his eyes, lines from the 9th dialogue floated up, unmoored from their context. The 9th path is the unpath, where the seeker walks by standing still. At some point past midnight, he gave up, turned off the light, and let the air conditioner's hum lull him into a shallow, unsatisfying sleep. He woke to his phone ringing. The number was unfamiliar, a Delhi mobile. "Hello?" he said thickly. "Professor Malhotra?" A man's voice, formal, with a faint rural lilt. "This is Inspector Devendra Singh from the Delhi Police. Am I speaking to Dr. Rohan Malhotra of the University of Chicago?" "Yes," Rohan said, sitting up. His heartbeat accelerated. "Is something wrong?" "I'm afraid so, sir," the inspector said. "Do you know a Mr. Arvind Khurana, bookseller, Daryaganj?" The room seemed suddenly smaller. "I met him yesterday," Rohan said. "Why? What happened?" There was a pause, like a small respectful bow in audio form. "Mr. Khurana was found dead in his shop early this morning," Inspector Singh said. "It appears to be murder." Rohan's throat felt suddenly dry. "How?" he managed. "That is under investigation," Singh said. "We are hoping you can assist us. Your card was in his register, and his assistant said you were with him for many hours yesterday. We would like you to come to the Daryaganj police station as soon as convenient. As soon as—" Rohan glanced at the clock. 7:12 a.m. His heart thudded. "Of course. Yes, I'll be there within an hour." "Thank you, sir," Singh said. "Ask for me when you arrive." The line went dead. For a long moment, Rohan sat on the edge of the bed, the phone still in his hand, the cheap hotel abstract painting on the wall swimming before his eyes. Murder. He forced himself to stand, to shower, to dress. As he tied his shoes, a stray thought surfaced. Who has the manuscript now? He hailed a cab. The streets, even at that hour, were busy. Vendors were setting up stalls. Tea shops did brisk business with office workers. The Daryaganj police station was an old, peeling building with barred windows and a yard full of parked motorbikes. Inside, a ceiling fan labored to push around air heavy with dust and sweat. He was directed to a small office on the first floor. The nameplate on the frosted glass door read, Inspector D. Singh. Inside, a man in his 30s with an impressively waxed moustache stood as Rohan entered. "Professor Malhotra?" he said, offering a hand. "I am Inspector Devendra Singh. Please, sit." Rohan sat on the wooden chair. The inspector's desk was cluttered with files, a landline phone, a half-eaten packet of biscuits, and a small brass idol of Ganesh. "I am very sorry to drag you into this," Singh said. "We know you have come as a guest to India." It's all right," Rohan said. "What happened?" Singh's expression shifted into something more official. "Mr. Khurana's assistant, Amit Jain, came to open the shop at around 7 o'clock, as usual," he said. "He found the shutter slightly open. Inside, the shop was in some disarray. Mr. Khurana was lying on the floor behind the counter. There was blood." He paused. A doctor from the locality confirmed he was dead. Rohan gripped the edge of the chair. "Was anything stolen?" he asked. "Books? Cash?" "We're still taking inventory," Singh said. At first glance, the cash register had been opened, but there was money still inside. Some things were thrown around, but not smashed. He tilted his head. "Were you aware of anyone who might wish Mr. Khurana harm?" Rohan hesitated. Saxena's thin smile flickered in his mind. "There was a man in the shop yesterday," he said slowly. "Name of Saxena, a broker," Mr. Khurana said. "They argued politely about a sale. It was tense." Singh made a note. "Do you know his full name?" "No." "Anything else?" "He mentioned a man he called Rao," Rohan said. "A shadow," he said. "Someone pressuring him to sell a manuscript." Singh's eyes sharpened. "Ah, yes, the manuscript." He flipped through a file, took out a sheet of paper, and slid it across the desk. "Mr. Jain said you came yesterday to examine a valuable manuscript of some kind. Is that correct?" Rohan looked at the form. It was a witness statement in Hindi, in Amit's scrawled handwriting. Yes, he said. A putative 17th century Hindi manuscript, a dialogue associated with Dara Shikoh. Is that manuscript missing this morning? Singh asked mildly. Rohan opened his mouth, then closed it. I don't know, he said. I came straight here. Singh studied him. Professor, he said, in my job I meet three kinds of people. Those who lie badly, those who lie well, and those who tell awkward truths. I am trying to decide which you are. I'm an academic, Rohan said. We do awkward truths for a living. Singh's mouth twitched. That is good, because this situation is already delicate. An old man, respected in his community, is killed. His assistant says a foreign scholar came to see a manuscript. The manuscript may or may not now be gone. Somewhere in the background there is a man called Rao and an unknown number of jackals. What do you need from me? Rohan asked. For the moment, Singh said. A detailed account of your interactions with Mr. Khurana yesterday, from the moment you entered his shop to the moment you left, including any discussions about money or the sale of the manuscript or your professional opinion of its value. My professional opinion, Rohan said, was that it was complicated. Complicated, Singh repeated. I am beginning to dislike that word. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. There is one more thing, he said. You understand that in a murder investigation we have to consider all possibilities, including that the last person to see the victim alive might have had something to do with his death. Rohan felt a surge of incredulous anger. Are you suggesting I... Singh lifted a hand. I am suggesting nothing. I am explaining procedure. If you were a Delhi resident, we would ask you not to leave the city without informing us. As it is, you are a foreign national. You have a flight to Agra? I was going to take the train, Rohan said. Ah, then I must ask you, Singh's voice was careful, almost apologetic, not to leave Delhi for the next few days. Your passport will be kept temporarily at the station. You will, of course, be given a receipt. Rohan stared at him. You're confiscating my passport. Temporarily, Singh said. It is standard procedure, Professor. We have to ensure that witnesses remain accessible. You are not under arrest. It doesn't feel very voluntary. Singh's gaze hardened slightly. Professor, he said, I have one body. I do not wish to acquire others through carelessness. If someone is willing to kill an old bookseller for a manuscript, do you think they will hesitate to harm a learned gentleman from Chicago who has seen that manuscript and spoken about it? Rohan's anger faltered. You think I'm in danger, he said. Singh shrugged. In my experience, anyone who stands between jackals and meat is in danger, whether he realizes it or not. Rohan wrestled with a sharp, irrational urge to bolt, to grab his passport and run to the airport and board the next plane to anywhere. But the image of Khurana's earnest face rose up, and behind it the inked words of the 9th dialogue. Fine, he said quietly. You'll have my passport. Thank you, Singh said. His tone softened. And if it helps, the officer who will be working most closely with you is very good at her job. Her? Rohan said. Singh smiled faintly. Inspector Nandini Yadav. She's with Crime Branch. We work together when anything sensitive comes up. You will like her, or you will find her terrifying. Hopefully both. 4. Inspector Yadav. He met her at the crime scene. The shutter of Khurana's shop was halfway up, guarded by a bored constable who checked a list and lifted the tape to let them pass. Inside, the familiar musty air was tainted with something metallic and wrong. Books lay scattered on the floor behind the counter, as if someone had swept an arm across a shelf in frustration. A faint, dried spray of blood arced across the lower glass. A small woman in plain clothes, dark trousers, pale blue shirt, hair pulled back into a no-nonsense ponytail, stood near the back, a notebook in hand. She wore no obvious gun, but there was nothing soft about her stance. Inspector, Singh called. This is Professor Malhotra. She turned. Her eyes were dark and assessing, taking in Rohan's face, his posture, the way he hesitated at the threshold. Professor, she said, I'm Inspector Nandini Yadav. I'll be handling this case. I hear you've already met the Delhi police's finest moustache. She jerked a thumb at Singh. Madam is jealous, Singh said mildly. Rohan managed a weak smile. I'm sorry we're meeting like this. So am I, Yadav said. Murders are bad for tourism. She snapped her notebook closed. Tell me, Professor, she said. What did you think when you heard Mr. Khurana was dead? The question was so abrupt that he blinked. I thought... He searched for words. I thought it's not fair. She tilted her head. That's an emotional answer. I'm looking for the next thought. The next thought, he said slowly, was, where is the manuscript? Yadav's mouth quirked. Better. She led him behind the counter. The space where he remembered the manuscript being placed was empty. The glass case's contents had been rummaged through. We've done some preliminary checks, she said. In the register yesterday, Mr. Khurana listed one item under Special Vault, Navam Samvad MS. Today, the entry is circled in red and the vault is empty. She opened the small cabinet under the counter, revealing a dented metal box lying open, its felt lining bare. A few coins rattled in the corner. The cash drawer had about 20,000 rupees, she said. Still there, more or less. A thief interested primarily in petty cash would have taken it. Someone interested in one particular item might not have bothered. Of course, this could mean the thief was both stupid and lucky. Do you have any leads? Rohan asked. We have, Yadav said. A lot of booksellers who are very upset, one dead man, one missing manuscript, and a universe of speculation. We also have, she nodded toward the front, Amit Jain. Amit stood near the entrance talking to a uniformed officer. When he saw Rohan, his face paled. Professor, he said, crossing quickly, I left just before you did yesterday, then this morning, his voice wobbled. They said he was dead. I thought it was a joke. A bad one. I'm sorry, Amit, Rohan said. I know you were close. He was the only one in my family who understood why I wanted to study history, Amit said, words tumbling out fast. Everyone else said engineering, law, IAS. He took me in here. Let me read. He kept this shop going when no one cared about Urdu anymore. And now, his hands clenched into fists. Whoever did this, they don't know what they've killed. Yadav watched him, expression unreadable. Amit, she said, voice gentler than Rohan had expected. You told us yesterday a man came to the shop, Saxena, who sometimes brings clients. Yes, Amit said. He was angry that Uncle wouldn't sell. He said some things. What things? Yadav asked. That it was stupid to hold out for some foreign buyer, Amit said. His gaze flicked to Rohan. No offense, sir. That the man he represented was generous but not patient. That in this business, delays can be dangerous. Did he mention this man's name? Yadav asked. He said Rao, like always, Amit said. No surname, just Rao. Useful, Yadav muttered. She looked at Rohan again. And you, Professor, did Mr. Khurana say anything else about this Rao? Only that he was dangerous, Rohan said. The word jackal came up. A lot of jackals in this city, Yadav said. Most of them in politics and real estate. She glanced around the shop. And some in books. She moved with quick, efficient steps, checking angles, peering at scuff marks on the floor. Crime Branch got a call from Singh this morning, she said over her shoulder. Old man murdered, valuable manuscript missing, foreign academic involved, maybe some big money in the shadows. It ticked enough boxes to land on my desk. She straightened. Also, I like books. You like them enough to risk your life for them? Rohan asked. She gave him a flat look. I like them enough to be annoyed when they get people killed. She nodded toward the back. Come. There's something I want to show you. She led him to the little room upstairs where he'd spent the previous afternoon. The door was open. Inside, the table still bore the faint impression his arms had made in the dust. On the floor, near the leg of the table, something glittered faintly. Yadav crouched and picked it up with a gloved hand. It was a cufflink. Silver, with an inlaid stone shaped like a small blue shield. Recognize it? She asked. No, Rohan said. He hesitated. Saxena, yesterday, wore no cufflinks. Just a simple kurta. And Mr. Khurana? He rolled his sleeves up constantly, Rohan said. I don't think he even owned cufflinks. Exactly, Yadav said. She slipped the cufflink into a plastic evidence bag. So someone else has been in this room since you left. Someone who dresses better than our local brokers. She stood, brushing dust from her knees. Professor, what did you tell Mr. Khurana yesterday about the manuscript? Your conclusion? That it was likely not an original 17th century document, Rohan said. That it might be a later reconstruction. That it was complex and would need further analysis. In other words, Yadav said, you told him that the goose he had might or might not lay golden eggs, and that anyone who bought it should be cautious. That's one way of putting it, Rohan said. And if you were a man like Rao, she continued, who had perhaps already promised a prince's ransom to own this goose, and you heard that the scholar you thought would bless the sale was having doubts, how would you react? I might try to persuade the scholar to see things differently, Rohan said. And if persuasion failed? Yadav asked. Rohan swallowed. There are cruder methods. She nodded. The simplest would be to remove the one man who's hesitating, the bookseller, and then either coerce or sideline the scholar. But there's a problem. What problem? Rohan asked. You're still alive, Yadav said, and the manuscript is gone. She turned to him fully, her eyes sharp. So tell me, Professor Malhotra from the University of Chicago, she said softly, do you know where it is? 5. The offer. He didn't, of course. What he did know with a sinking feeling was that being the last person to examine an object now missing, belonging to a man now murdered, put him in a position that no amount of academic prestige could protect him from. I left it on this table, he said. I closed it. I told Mr. Khurana my impressions. He said he would keep it in his vault. That was the last I saw of it. No one followed you? Yadav asked. No men in sunglasses, no black cars, no suspiciously friendly strangers at your hotel bar? This is not a movie, Rohan said. I am, to most of the world, an anonymous man in his late 30s who owns too many books. Jackals who want specific meat know the animals that stand near it, Yadav said. Be cautious, Professor. As if to punctuate her words, Rohan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He looked at Yadav. Should I? She nodded. Put it on speaker, he answered. Hello? A smooth male voice, accented but polished, flowed through the tiny speaker. Professor Malhotra, it said. Forgive the intrusion. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Who is this? Rohan asked. A friend, the voice said. A man who has admired your work for some time. Your book on Dara Shikoh's dialogues is very fine. I especially liked your chapter on absences. Rohan felt Yadav's attention sharpen beside him. How did you get this number? He asked. Delhi, the voice said, amused. Everything is available if you know where to look. I hear you visited our mutual acquaintance, Mr. Khurana, yesterday. Our mutual acquaintance, Rohan repeated. You mean you knew him? We had business, the voice said. Sadly, he has met with an accident. That's one word for it, Rohan said. Words are your specialty, Professor, not mine, the voice said. Mine is acquisitions. I believe you examined a certain manuscript in his possession. I would very much like to hear your professional opinion of it. I'm not in the habit of giving opinions over the phone to anonymous callers, Rohan said. Ah, the voice said. Then allow me to be slightly less anonymous. My name is Rao. Yadav's eyes widened a fraction. Ah, Rohan said. The man behind the man. I prefer to think of myself as the man behind the book, Rao said. Books need patrons, especially in this age. The state does not care, the people are distracted. Only private individuals with taste can rescue these fragile things from oblivion. By hoarding them in private vaults, Rohan said. By protecting them from idiots and arsonists, Rao countered. But let us not quarrel about ideology, Professor. I called because I respect expertise. I understand you found Mr. Khurana's manuscript problematic. You seem remarkably well informed, Rohan said. Delhi again, Rao said lightly. Also, people talk when frightened. Mr. Saxena has a tendency to overshare when he is nervous. He felt betrayed. I felt cautious. Hence this call. What exactly do you want? Rohan asked. A conversation, Rao said. Some clarity. I would like to know whether this manuscript is worth the trouble it has already caused. And if it isn't, Rohan said, then I adjust my investments, Rao said. I cut my losses. Perhaps the manuscript vanishes quietly into some fire, perhaps not. That depends on other factors. And if it is? Rohan asked. Then, Rao said, I am willing to pay handsomely to secure it. Yadav scribbled something in her notebook, her pen moving fast. As I told Mr. Khurana, Rohan said carefully, I believe the manuscript is likely a later composition, possibly a 19th century, drawing on earlier sources. It is not a straightforward primary document from Dara Shikoh's court, but it could contain echoes of an authentic ninth dialogue, Rao said. Possibly, Rohan said. But scholarly work would be needed to disentangle those threads. It is not a treasure you can display in a glass case with a simple label. It comes with footnotes that bite. Rao chuckled. You academics, he said, always undermining your own gold. Very well. Let us say it is of mixed authenticity. Is it dangerous? Dangerous how? Rohan asked. Politically, Rao said. You see, Professor, there are people in this country who would be very annoyed to see a Mughal prince presented not as a villain or a weakling, but as a saintly bridge between Hindu and Muslim thought, especially if that image were given new life by a lost dialogue. It might encourage the wrong sort of people. The wrong sort? Rohan said. The sort who like unity, Rao said. Soft people, idealists. People who think history is about learning, not about power. History is about both, Rohan said. Exactly, Rao said. So, your judgment matters. If you were to pronounce this manuscript as definitely forged, as something of purely modern invention, then its political potential would be diminished. It would become merely a curiosity for collectors like me. And if I said the opposite? Rohan asked. Then, Rao said, fires might start, not all of which I could control. You understand, Professor, why I take such an interest. Rohan felt a chill. You want me, he said slowly, to decide whether potential interreligious understanding is worth the risk of present-day unrest. Don't flatter yourself, Rao said. You are not so powerful, but your opinion will appear in footnotes, and footnotes in this business can move money, and sometimes mobs. So you would prefer I declared it fake, Rohan said. I would prefer clarity, Rao said. One way or another. Let me make this simple. I am prepared to offer you a very generous consultancy fee for your time and expertise. You could pay off any debts, fund a few graduate students, buy better wine. His voice softened. Think of it as patronage, Professor. The great scholars of the past had it. Why not you? And in return? Rohan asked. In return, Rao said. You share with me privately the conclusions you will eventually arrive at publicly. You do not need to lie. You merely need to focus on certain aspects. Emphasize doubt, de-emphasize possibility. Words, Professor, just words. Rohan glanced at Yadav. Her face might have been carved from stone. I'm afraid, he said, that my words are annoyingly attached to my conscience. Everyone's conscience has a price, Rao said. Even if it is the illusion of having no price. Think about it. I will call again. The line went dead. For a long moment there was only the buzz of the weak fluorescent light. Well, Yadav said, you make interesting friends, Professor. He found me, Rohan said, like some malignant jinn. He's not a jinn, Yadav said. He's a man with money, information, and a network of people who owe him favors, which is worse. She slipped her phone back into her pocket. Thank you, she said. That call was illuminating. I'm glad it was good for someone, Rohan muttered. She regarded him. You understand now why we are confiscating your passport, she said. You are not just a witness. You are now a node. A node, Rohan said. In a network. Yadav said. Between a murdered bookseller, a missing manuscript, a dangerous collector, and a narrative about Dara Shikoh that certain people would kill to control. You make it sound so dramatic, Rohan said. It is dramatic, Yadav said. You academics write about how text can get you killed. This is that footnote in real time. She slid the evidence bag with the cuff link between two fingers. Do you know, she said thoughtfully, who else likes to wear cufflinks like this? Not brokers, not booksellers, people who attend big parties, embassy receptions, hotel conferences, people who think they are important. Politicians, Rohan guessed. Politicians, businessmen, bureaucrats, foreign delegates, Yadav said. People who drink whiskey in five-star bars and make deals that affect people who will never see the inside of those bars. She eyed him. People like your conference organizers. My conference? Rohan stopped. You think someone at the Agra conference might be involved? It's a long shot, Yadav said. But consider, a sudden phone call from Rao, who clearly has people feeding him information, a cufflink in a dusty bookroom, a murdered man who had just written to a famous foreign scholar, and a manuscript whose existence could make or break certain narratives about Mughal India, and where, next week, will a large number of those narrative makers be? At the Indo-Persian Studies Conference, Rohan said slowly. In Agra. Exactly, Yadav said. Textual detectives meet real detectives. She looked at him. How do you feel about going to Agra after all? She asked. Not as a free scholar, but as bait. Rohan stared at her. You want to use me as bait, he said. I prefer the term strategic attractor, Yadav said. But yes, Rao clearly thinks you matter. He will reach out again. I would like him to do so when we're prepared. You can't even guarantee my safety in Delhi, Rohan said. You've just told me people are willing to kill for this manuscript, and now you want to move the show to Agra? Professor, Yadav said, I can't guarantee anyone's safety anywhere. Not yours in Delhi, not mine at home, not Amit's in this very bazaar. All I can do is stack the odds. She tapped the evidence bag with the cufflink. Right now, she went on, we have a dead bookseller, a missing manuscript, and a shadowy collector whose money reaches into places I don't like. What we don't have is proof. Proof needs proximity. And I, Rohan said, am proximity. You're also the one person in this mess who actually understands what all this fuss is about, Yadav said. Everyone else is chasing a rumor. Lost Mughal text, ninth dialogue, historical bomb. You're the one who can say, this matters in this particular way. That makes you leverage. Dangerous, yes. Useful also, yes. Rohan rubbed his eyes. I came here to give a keynote address on interreligious dialogue, he said. Now I'm being asked to star in a police sting operation. Think of it as fieldwork, Yadav said dryly. Participant observation. He almost laughed. Almost. What exactly would the plan be? He asked instead. Assuming I didn't decide to jump on the next plane back to Chicago and take up a less stressful profession, like lion taming. Yadav's mouth twitched. We don't have the full plan yet, she admitted. But some things are already clear. 1. Rao will not walk into a police station. He will meet through intermediaries in places he thinks he controls. 2. He is obsessed with this manuscript. 3. He now knows you are uncertain about its authenticity and that your opinion could affect its value. He will want to shape that. 4. He thinks the manuscript is in play. It is in play, Rohan said. It's missing. Yadav's gaze slid briefly to Amit, who stood silently by the door, hands shoved into his pockets. Amit, she said, before you discovered Mr. Khurana this morning, did you notice anything else unusual? Any sign that he might have moved the manuscript somewhere? Amit hesitated. He locked it in the vault last night, he said slowly. I saw him. After Professor left. We closed up as usual. He told me not to come early today, to sleep in for once. He was joking. His throat worked. So you weren't the one who opened the shop? Yadav asked. No, Amit said. When I arrived, the shutter was already slightly open. At first I thought Uncle had forgotten to close properly. Then I saw. Okay, Yadav said. So either someone forced him to open the vault, or they had a key. He was too careful to leave it lying around. She looked back at Rohan. Which brings us back to Agra, a conference full of historians, people who know what manuscripts should look like, people who might be tempted to engage in extra academic activities. You think Rao has people in the academy, Rohan said. I would be shocked if he didn't, Yadav said. Who else authenticates his trophies? Who whispers to him what to buy? Who writes nice catalogue notes for his private pleasure? Rohan thought of certain colleagues, the ones always on first-name terms with wealthy donors, who could produce a rare manuscript for a visiting dignitary as casually as others produced biscuits at tea. The conference, he said slowly, is being partially funded by the Sanskriti Heritage Trust. Yadav raised an eyebrow. Ah. They're a big cultural foundation, Rohan said. They fund digitization projects, endangered languages, workshops, that sort of thing. Their logo is a little blue shield, actually. He glanced at the evidence bag in her hand. The cufflink's inlaid stone was the same color. Yadav smiled, but there was no humor in it. Well, she said, isn't the universe helpful? 6. The hidden gift. He didn't find the manuscript until that night. The day passed in a blur of interviews and signatures and procedural explanations. At the station, a clerk with ink-stained fingers photocopied his passport and handed him a flimsy receipt in exchange for the original. Singh hovered, apologetic. Yadav busied herself with calls to Agra, to Crime Branch, to someone at the ministry who sounded both annoyed and nervous. In between, they sketched a plan. You go to Agra as scheduled, Yadav said. You give your keynote, you behave like an academic at a conference, complain about the food, gossip about colleagues, pretend to be interested in panel discussions. Meanwhile, you keep your eyes open for anyone with those cufflinks, or that logo, or who suddenly takes a very keen interest in the 9th dialogue. I had already included a section on the missing 9th dialogue in my talk, Rohan said grimly. I suppose I'm stuck with it now. Don't say anything about Khurana's manuscript, Yadav said. Not yet. As far as the world is concerned, it's still a rumor. Let it stay that way. And if Rao calls again? Rohan asked. Answer, Yadav said. Play the cautious scholar. Say you need time. Say you refuse to be pressured. Men like him aren't used to hearing no. They find it stimulating. You're enjoying this, Rohan accused. I enjoy puzzles, she said. And annoying, dangerous men. She arranged with Agra police to have a few plainclothes officers at the conference venue. She arranged with the organizers, through a bland email about security concerns, to have Rohan's arrival recorded, his movements noted. She even arranged, reluctantly, for a crime branch technician to casually sweep his hotel room for bugs and cameras. It was that technician, a skinny woman with severe glasses, who opened his suitcase with gloved hands and froze. Sir, she called, did you pack this? Rohan, standing by the window watching Connaught Place's neon flicker on, turned. In fact, he said, I packed my suitcase myself. I'm very careful with my toothbrush. Why? The technician lifted something wrapped in cotton cloth, yellowed at the edges. It was the same size, the same shape, as the bundle he had seen in Khurana's hands. For a moment the room shrank to the size of that cloth. That's impossible, he said. Sir, with respect, the technician said, it is in your suitcase, so it is not impossible. Yadav took the bundle, unwrapped it, and stared. The codex lay between her palms like a guilty heart. Banwari Das's masterpiece, she murmured. I'll be damned. I didn't. Rohan began, then stopped. He thought back. Yesterday afternoon, the little room upstairs. Last night, him leaving the shop, distracted. Where had his bag been? He remembered setting it down near the counter while he said goodbye to Khurana. Remembered bending over the ledger to write his email address. Remembered Khurana fussing with some cloth, his hands moving quickly. Oh, he breathed. Oh, you old fox. Professor, Yadav said. He must have slipped it into my bag while I wasn't looking, Rohan said. He told me to come back this morning, but if he thought he might be... Pressured. Last night. If he decided not to sell, he might have wanted a way to get the manuscript out of the shop without anyone seeing. Trusting you to be the mule, Yadav said. Apparently, Rohan said faintly. He sank onto the bed. I walked all over Connaught Place and Daryaganj with that thing in my bag, he said. If anyone had known, they didn't, Yadav said. Or you'd be in the morgue with Mr. Khurana. She turned the codex over gently, inspecting it. This complicates things. That word again, Rohan said. Complication is my job description, she said. Previously we had a murder and a missing manuscript. Now we have a murder and a found manuscript that no one except the three of us knows is found. 4, the technician said. I am here. 4, Yadav corrected. And I am inclined to keep it that way. For now. You're not going to log it as evidence? Rohan asked. Oh, I will log something, Yadav said. A description, a note. But we don't have to log the fact that it is currently in your possession. That sounds irregular, he said. Professor, she said, we are not dealing with a regular thief. We are dealing with a network that can get information out of my own station faster than my constables. You heard how quickly Rao knew what you'd told Khurana. If I place this manuscript in our evidence room, it will become a magnet. Evidence rooms have locks. Locks have keys. Keys have cousins. You want me to take it to Agra, he said slowly, as bait. Now you're learning the vocabulary, she said. Look at it this way. You were already going to Agra as a man who might or might not be useful to Rao. Now you are going as the man secretly carrying the one thing he wants most in the world. Let's see what that desperation flushes out. And if I decide, Rohan said carefully, that I'm not comfortable smuggling a murder book across state lines. Yadav's gaze softened, just a fraction. Then I log it, she said, formally. It goes into a vault we control. We fight the battle here, and you go home and write another book about absences. And Rao? He asked. He keeps operating, she said. He finds other manuscripts, other dealers. Maybe he gets sloppy someday and we catch him. Maybe he doesn't. That's how it goes sometimes. It was, he realized, a real choice. Not a forced one masquerading as agency, but a fork in a very specific road. He thought of Khurana's face, earnest and tired and alive yesterday afternoon. Thought of his words. If I am to risk my life, I would like to know precisely for what. He thought of Dara Shikoh, prince who had believed you could stitch a fragile unity out of words. And he thought of Banwari Das, the unknown scribe who might have written this 9th dialogue 2 centuries later, somewhere under another empire's boot heel, thinking, someone in the future will need this. Okay, he said. His voice surprised him. It was steady. I'll take it. Yadav studied him. You're sure? She asked. No, he said, but I'm saying yes. A slow smile, unguarded this time, ghosted across her face. Good, she said. I was beginning to worry I'd misjudged you. 7 Agra. The train to Agra was late, of course. The Shatabdi Express eventually pulled out of New Delhi station with a lurch, its blue carriages stuffed with tourists, families, businessmen theatrically annoyed into their phones. Rohan sat by the window, the cotton-wrapped codex snug in his carry-on. He had done up the zipper 3 times as though counting a rosary. Opposite him, a young couple took selfies, the Taj Mahal already shimmering in their cheerful anticipation. Beside them, an elderly man in a Nehru jacket read a Hindi newspaper, occasionally snorting derisively at some headline. Outside, Delhi's concrete and chaos gave way to patchy fields, brick kilns, buffaloes standing in shallow ponds with the tragic dignity of exiled gods. He tried to read, but every sentence turned into some version of, "What are you doing?" He texted Amit once, "Reach train, we'll update from Agra." Amit replied almost instantly. "Uncle would have been proud you said yes. Be careful, and don't let any idiot professor mansplain Dara to you." Rohan smiled despite himself. At Agra Kant station, the air was hotter, heavier. A driver holding a placard with his name, Dr. R. Malhotra, Indo-Persian Conf, ushered him to a white Innova. The conference hotel loomed over the road to Tajganj, a modern five-star behemoth with mirrored windows and a discreet Sanskriti Heritage Trust banner over the entrance. Inside, the lobby hummed with academics. He recognized faces from book jackets, conference programs, unflattering Facebook photos. Dr. Farida Nawaz from Aligarh, Dr. Prakash Sharma from JNU, Professor Helen Lacey from SOS. Near the registration desk, a tall man in a tailored suit stood talking to the organizers. His cufflinks flashed blue when he gestured. Rohan felt absurdly that they flashed louder than the chandeliers. "And we are delighted to have the support of the Sanskriti Heritage Trust again this year," the conference chair was saying, his voice the particular octave reserved for donors, deanlays, and ministers. "Dr. Mathur, your presence is an honor." "Please call me Vikram," the suited man said modestly. "We are merely facilitators. Scholars like you do the real work." He saw Rohan looking and turned with practiced ease. "Ah," he said, "Dr. Malhotra, our keynote speaker, we are so pleased you could join us." His hand extended. The cufflink winked again. Blue shield, silver border. "Vikram Mathur," he said, "Director, Sanskriti Heritage Trust." His grip was warm, firm. "Rohan Malhotra," Rohan said. His mouth was dry. "Thank you for your foundation's support." "It is a joy to be associated with such minds," Mathur said. "Your work on Dara Shikoh in particular has been a favorite in our office. We are always looking for projects that reframe Indian history in nuanced ways." There was something in the way he said nuanced that made Rohan's stomach tighten, as if he were being handed a glass of water with a faint smell of petrol. "I'm glad to hear it," Rohan said. Mathur's eyes flickered, taking in the small details. Rohan's travel-creased kurta, his worn leather bag, the callus on his finger from years of writing. "If there is anything you need during your stay," Mathur said, "please let me or my staff know. We want you to be comfortable. Creative minds need comfort, not like us bureaucrats." He laughed lightly. "We run on bad coffee and worse policy." "Thank you," Rohan said. "I'll keep that in mind." As Mathur drifted away, trailing organizers and compliments, Rohan exhaled slowly. He texted Yadav a single line, "Blue cufflinks located, attached to funding ecosystem." A moment later, his phone buzzed. "Of course they are. Keep eyes open. Call after your keynote, and don't get drunk at the welcome dinner." "You think very little of my professionalism," he replied. "I have known professors," she texted back. The keynote went better than he expected. The conference hall was over-air-conditioned, the mic occasionally squealing, the projector temperamental, the usual. He spoke about Dara Shikoh's project of translation, about how the prince had brought the Upanishads into Persian not to dominate but to listen, to find echoes. He spoke about Baba Lal, the itinerant ascetic whose Hindi words had found their way into royal circles. He spoke about the 8 known dialogues, about how their textual history was messy, layered, contested. He did not mention the 9th. He did, however, talk about rumors. "Sometimes," he said, "what haunts a tradition is not simply what is preserved, but what is imagined as lost." The idea that there was a final conversation between Dara and his saint, one last summation of unity, has hovered around these texts for centuries. Whether such a conversation occurred is, in a sense, less important than what the belief in its loss has done. Absence becomes a kind of presence. He could feel Mathur's gaze on him from the front row, evaluative, interested. Later, at the Q&A, a young scholar from Hyderabad asked the question that came at every such talk. "Professor," she said, "why do you think the 9th dialogue was lost? If it existed, who would have had reason to suppress it?" Rohan could almost hear the universe chuckling. "Historians," he said, "are wary of attributing intention to absence. Manuscripts are fragile. Wars happen. Termites happen. But certainly in the period after Dara's execution, material associated with him became toxic in certain circles. A text that presented him as a saint of unity might have been an embarrassment to those who preferred a more polarized narrative." Mathur leaned forward slightly. "In the 19th century," Rohan continued, As communal identities hardened under colonial policies, that embarrassment might have increased. A dialogue in which a Mughal prince and a Hindu ascetic speak of oneness would have troubled both emerging Hindu and Muslim nationalisms in different ways. Sometimes texts are not merely lost, they are let go. Afterwards, in the lobby, as scholars milled about with coffee, Mather approached again, this time with 2 drinks in hand. "You gave us a lot to think about," he said, handing Rohan a cup. "Thank you," Rohan said. He sniffed. "Filter coffee, not whiskey. Progress." "You mentioned 19th century nationalisms," Mather said. "Have you considered the possibility that a lost dialogue might have been manufactured in that period to serve a particular agenda? A kind of retroactive script for unity?" Rohan's heart stuttered. "That is one of many possibilities," he said carefully. "I've discussed it in my book." Mather smiled. "I know," he said. "I read that chapter twice." He clinked his coffee cup lightly against Rohan's. "Sometimes," he said, "what we invent says as much about us as what we inherit." His phone buzzed then. He glanced at it, frowned. "I have to take this," he said, stepping away. "Please excuse me." Rohan watched his back. The blue shield on Mather's cufflink glinted under the lobby lights. 8. Shadows in the stacks. That evening, while other delegates were off to see the Taj by moonlight, Rohan wandered into the hotel's temporary book room. Every conference had one, a makeshift shop where publishers laid out their wares, smelling opportunity and institutional budgets. Here, tables groaned under the weight of new monographs on Persian calligraphy, Mughal politics, Sufi networks. A bored salesman scrolled through his phone behind a stack of catalogues. Rohan drifted, skimming titles, letting the familiar academic nonsense, reimagining transcultural performativities in early modern Hindustan, rinse some of the day's adrenaline from his system. At the back, near a forlorn pile of conference proceedings from 5 years ago, he saw a display he hadn't expected. A glass case illuminated from within. Inside, on a velvet cushion, lay what looked like an old manuscript leaf. A small sign announced, "Sanskriti Heritage Trust." On display, folio from a 17th century copy of Dara Shikoh's Majma-ul-Bahrain, courtesy of a private collection. Rohan moved closer. The page was covered in elegant nastaliq, the ink still rich. A floral border curled around the text. In the margin, a small note in a different hand commented on a Sanskrit term. It was, without question, beautiful. "Impressive, isn't it?" a voice said at his shoulder. He turned. A woman in her 40s stood there, wearing a simple salwar kameez, a conference badge dangling from her neck. "Dr. Saira Siddiqui, JNU." Rohan's face broke into a genuine smile. "Saira," he said, "I hoped you'd be here." "And miss a chance to watch the foreign star professor giving keynotes?" she said. "Never." They had been graduate students together once, in Delhi, before Rohan left for the US, and Saira stubbornly stayed, carving out a career in a system that seemed to resent her for existing. They'd stayed in touch erratically. Emails, occasional conference sightings, long silences punctuated by bursts of conversation. "You saw the sponsor's toy," she said, nodding at the case. "Vikram loves showing that off. Makes him feel like a Mughal himself." "Is it authentic?" Rohan asked. She shrugged. "Looks like it. Provenance is murkier, but that's true of half the manuscripts in private hands. Some respectable collector somewhere had a vaguely disreputable uncle and so on. The usual." "The usual is getting people killed these days," he said quietly. She glanced at him, eyebrows raised. "Ah, so you've heard about Arvind." "You knew him?" Rohan asked. "Of course," she said. "Every Delhi bookworm over the age of 20 knows him. He used to scold me for not wearing sweaters in winter, and for not charging enough for my consulting." Her smile faded. "When I heard he'd been attacked, I knew there had to be something big in that shop." She sipped her tea. "I told him to be careful," she added, "when he first mentioned a mysterious 9th manuscript last month." Rohan turned sharply. "He told you that?" "Relax," she said. He didn't show it to me, just said he'd come across something potentially explosive connected to our favorite prince. Wanted to know if I could put him in touch with honest scholars abroad. I told him about you, about your work. I didn't think—" Her voice trailed. "You didn't think someone would end up dead," he finished. She looked at him steadily. "Is it real?" she asked. He chose his words with care. "It is a real manuscript with fake ambitions," he said. 19th century, I think. Maybe an honest attempt to reconstruct a lost text. Maybe an ideological project of its own. Either way, not what certain people wanted to believe." She absorbed this. "And now," she said. "And now," he said, "it's complicated." "You always say that when something is interesting," she said. "Occupational hazard," he said. She was watching him closely now, a historian's curiosity sharpened by something more. "You're involved," she said softly. It was not a question. "More than academically." He hesitated. "You know," she went on, "if you wanted to talk off the record in the guise of catching up with an old friend, I might be available. I have experience with certain kinds of academic criminal overlap." He blinked. "I didn't realize JNU had expanded its curriculum so ambitiously." She smiled thinly. "You remember the Babri Mosque archives case?" she said. "Those files that mysteriously went missing from Allahabad while certain political cases were ongoing?" "Of course," he said. "It was all over the news. I was on a committee that tried to trace some of the missing documents," she said, unofficially. "We found copies with wealthy collectors, in party offices, in private libraries of men who liked to appear on TV. That was when I first heard the name Rao." The name dropped between them like a pebble into a well. "He's been around that long?" Rohan asked. "Longer," she said. "Smuggling temple idols in the 80s, manuscripts in the 90s, land in the 2000s, always at the intersection of culture and power, always in the shadows. I've never seen his face, but I've seen his checks. His foundation, if it's the same man, is generous. To the right projects." She glanced meaningfully at the Sanskriti logo above the glass case. "You think Mather works for him?" Rohan said. "I think Mather works for whoever keeps his foundation flush," she said. "He's smart enough to see which narratives need amplifying and which need quietly disappearing." Rohan swallowed. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because," she said, "I like you, Malhotra, in an annoying old friend way. And because Arvind liked you enough to write that letter. And because I suspect you're about to step in something very messy." She looked at his bag. "And because," she said, "I think you're carrying something you shouldn't be." Rohan's hand tightened on the strap. "How—" he began. "Please," she said. "You think I haven't watched men walk into rooms holding things like they're carrying a sudden extra soul? You've had that bag locked to your body all day, even at lunch. You flinched when some poor postdoc bumped into you." He winced. "I'm that obvious?" "To people who know you," she said. "To most others, you're just another professor who's very attached to his laptop." She hesitated. "Look," she said, "I'm not asking you to tell me anything you're not allowed to. I know how these things work. Police, investigations, confidentiality. But if you need someone who understands both the texts and the ecosystem to bounce ideas off, call me. I owe Arvind that much." She scribbled her number on the back of a Sanskriti flyer and pressed it into his hand. "And Malhotra," she added as she turned to go. "Yes? This 9th dialogue," she said. "Whatever it is. Don't let them make it stand for more than it can, or less." The words lodged in him, somewhere between the scholar and the suddenly reluctant detective. 9. The Ninth Path. Back in his room, with the door triple-locked and the air conditioner groaning, Rohan unwrapped the manuscript. He had brought a small, portable scanner at Yadav's insistence. "You academics travel with more equipment than my forensic team," she had grumbled. "Put it to use." Now he set it up on the desk, machine humming softly, and began to feed it pages, one careful folio at a time. The process was hypnotic. Lift the cover, lay the page, close, scan. The screen flickered, capturing every line, every stain. A digital ghost of Banwari Das's work took form, pixel by pixel. Between scans, he read. The ninth dialogue unfolded in a voice that was both familiar and disconcertingly new. Dara's questions had the earnest, almost naive tone Rohan knew from the other dialogues, but there were undercurrents. References to specific policies, to the Chakladari revenue system, to the ethics of governance that felt more 19th century than 17th. At one point, Baba Lal said, "The ninth path, O Prince, is not walked by feet, nor written by pens. It is the path of refusal. When all the roads you are offered lead to injustice, the true path is the one you do not take." He paused, pen hovering over his notebook. "Path of refusal," he murmured. "Unpath. Interesting." Later, in a marginal note, in a smaller, faster hand, perhaps Banwari's private commentary, perhaps a later reader's, there was a sentence that snagged him. "Written in the year of the uprising, when men took up arms and texts both, and both were hunted." The year of the uprising. He sat back. He had suspected a 19th century origin, but here was the scribe practically underlining it. Written in the year when Indian soldiers mutinied, when civilians rose, when the East India Company's world began to crack. Banwari Das, if that name was real, might have been watching British troops hang rebels from trees, watching temples and mosques burned, watching manuscripts confiscated as evidence or loot. In that world, writing a new dialogue between Dara and Baba Lal, imagining them speaking across time about refusing unjust roads, was an act of audacious reconstruction. A forged text, yes, but also a plea. He found himself unexpectedly moved. "You're not a fraud," he said softly to the absent scribe. "You're a historian with fewer footnotes and more courage." His phone buzzed. Rao. He let it buzz 3 times before answering. "Professor," Rao said, "you've been busy." "Teaching, panels, bad coffee," Rohan said. "The glamorous life." "And perhaps scanning a certain manuscript," Rao said. "The glow of the machine is very flattering, I hear." Rohan's stomach turned to ice. "How? Delhi is closer than you think," Rao said. "As is Agra. Did you really imagine that once you walked out of that station, you were invisible?" Rohan glanced involuntarily at the ceiling corners, half expecting to see cameras. "If you already know I have it," he said, "we can stop pretending." "Excellent," Rao said. "Honesty is refreshing. You have it. You have read it. Tell me, is it everything Arvind thought?" "It's something different," Rohan said. "It's a 19th century act of imagination, written during 1857, a kind of dialogue between Dara and the rebels. It's not a Mughal original, but it's not a cheap fake either. It's dangerous in its own way." "Because it suggests Hindu-Muslim unity in the face of empire," Rao said. "Because it suggests refusing unjust power at all," Rohan said. "That message travels." Rao said. "You can see why certain people at certain times might not want that text widely read." "Yes," Rohan said, "and why others might want to weaponize it now." "What do you want to do with it, Professor?" Rao asked. "Truly, not academically, personally." Rohan looked at the codex, half scanned, its yet unread pages whispering. "I want to read it properly," he said, "to situate it, to publish it with a critical apparatus that makes it very hard to use irresponsibly." "Make it boring," Rao said. "Bury it in scholarship." "Illuminate it with context," Rohan said. "Tomato, tomato," Rao said. "And the physical object?" "It belongs in a public archive," Rohan said. "Accessible, protected." "There is no such thing in this country," Rao said. "Only spaces temporarily less corrupt than others. A state archive is controlled by the state. A private collection is controlled by me. Which devil do you trust?" "Neither," Rohan said, "which is why the more copies exist, the less leverage any one devil has." Rao was silent for a moment. "You've already scanned it," he said. "Good. That means if someone burns it, they only destroy paper, not text. That makes my job easier." "Your job," Rohan said. "Being what, exactly?" "To ensure that people who don't understand what they're handling don't get burnt," Rao said. "You, Professor, are a man who understands texts. You could be useful. I am going to make you one final offer." Rohan braced himself. "Bring the manuscript tomorrow evening," Rao said. 7 p.m. The garden behind the conference hotel by the old mango tree. Come alone. No police, no colleagues, no moral support. We will talk. If we come to an understanding, everyone walks away alive, and history is managed. And if we don't? Rohan asked. Then, Rao said softly, the jackals get hungry, and not only for you. The line clicked dead. Rohan stared at the phone, at the manuscript, at the scanner's gently glowing eye. Then he called Yadav. 10. Plans within plans. That bastard, Yadav said, after listening without interrupting. He thinks he's in a film. It's a very badly written one, Rohan said. The metaphors are heavy-handed. Thursday, 7 p.m., garden behind hotel, she said. He could hear paper rustling as she took notes. Can you send me a map of the layout? He snapped a photo of the hotel brochure's plan and sent it. Perfect, she said. Trees, hedges, multiple exits, ideal for an ambush, or for an ambush of an ambush. You're very cheerful, he said. I like having a date and time, she said. It focuses my day. We'll coordinate with Agra police. Plainclothes officers in the garden, on the roof at the gates, 1 or 2 posing as hotel staff. You will, of course, be wired. And if he has people checking for that? Rohan asked. He will, she said. So we use a small mic embedded in your shirt button. Old trick, harder to detect. And if he sees through it? He said. Then you stall, she said. Talk about textual variance. The fastest way to disarm a thug is to bore him. I thought you respected my profession, he said. I do, she said. I also know its powers. We'll be nearby. The moment there's a credible threat, a gun, a knife, a move to drag you into a car, we go in. In the best case, he comes himself. In the more likely case, he sends a lieutenant. Either way, we pull a thread. What about Matha? He asked. And the Sanskriti people? I've had someone run his background, she said. He's clean on paper, no obvious connections. That means either he's genuinely a civic-minded cultural bureaucrat, which would be novel, or he's very well protected. I don't have enough yet to move directly. Let's see who shows up at your little garden party. And the manuscript? He said. Do I bring the original? She hesitated. I don't love the idea of you walking into a potential abduction with a priceless manuscript on you, she said. But I also know men like Rao can smell substitutes. I've scanned most of it, he said. Even if something happens to the object, the text is safe. Most is not all, she said. Scan the rest tonight. No sleep for you. Think of it as exam season. Do you ever say anything comforting? He asked. Very rarely, she said. Usually when people are dying. Reassuring, he said. Look, she said, her tone softening. I know this is not what you signed up for. If at any point you want to pull out, say so. We'll adjust. He thought of that for a moment. I'll see you in Agra, he said. You'll hear me first, she replied, and hung up. 11. The garden. The next day passed in a haze of panels and pretense. Rohan sat through a session on translation as betrayal, another on Sufi networks and modern politics. He asked legally innocuous questions. He nodded at people in hallways. He drank too much tea. All the while, he carried the manuscript in his bag, wrapped and rewrapped. It felt, absurdly, as if Dara himself were peeking out between the zippers, amused. In the afternoon, he gave a shorter talk at a round table. He noticed Matha in the back, listening with narrowed eyes. Syra sat near the front, notebook open, occasionally scribbling, occasionally watching him. At 6:30, he went up to his room. He unwrapped the codex one last time. You're causing a lot of trouble for someone who may not even exist, he told Banwari Das. Let's hope you're worth it. He slipped the manuscript into an inner compartment of his bag, zipped it. He chose a plain shirt and trousers. Yadav had insisted on nothing that screams foreign academic more than you already do. The tiny mic in the second shirt button felt heavier than it was. At 6:50, he walked down to the lobby. On the surface, nothing was different. Delegates lingered over coffee. A tour group in matching baseball caps returned from the Taj, sunburned and delighted. A child cried near the check-in desk, tugging at her mother's sari. In his ear, a faint crackle sounded. "Testing!" Yadav's voice said. "Professor, can you hear me?" "Loud and clear," he murmured. "Good," she said. "We've got 3 officers posing as hotel staff in the garden. Waiters, gardener, security. 2 on the roof with binoculars. Local police cars are a minute away. If at any point you feel something is off, say a pre-agreed phrase." "What phrase?" he asked. "Something you'd never say," she said. "Like, I agree with subaltern studies." He snorted. "You're lucky the mic doesn't broadcast my thoughts," he said. "Where are you?" "Nearby," she said. "Don't look for me." He stepped out into the garden. The air was thick and warm. Fairy lights were strung between trees. The hotel used this space for weddings, he remembered seeing on the brochure. Tonight it was empty, the lawn chairs stacked, the bar shuttered. He walked to the old mango tree at the far end. Its trunk was thick, its roots like sleeping animals. "Right on time," a voice said. A man stepped out from behind the tree. It was not the voice from the phone. The man wore a light grey suit, no tie, shirt cufflinks gleaming blue. His hair was peppered with grey at the temples. He could have passed for any successful Delhi professional in his 40s. "Dr. Mathur," Rohan said. Mathur smiled. "I hope you didn't really expect some skulking figure in a black kurta," he said. "We all have our day jobs." "You work for Rao," Rohan said. Mathur tipped his head slightly. "I work with many people," he said. "Rao is one of our patrons." "Our?" Rohan said. "Sanskriti Heritage Trust does fine work," Mathur said lightly. "We fund libraries, archives, heritage walks. We also ensure that certain objects of particular sensitivity are kept away from the hands of those who would misuse them." "And to finance that," Rohan said, "you buy and sell looted artifacts on the side." "That's a very harsh way of putting it," Mathur said. His smile had cooled. "We operate in a grey zone, Professor, because the law, as written, is often inadequate to protect what matters." "And murder?" Rohan asked. "Is that in a grey zone too?" For the first time, Mathur's composure flickered. "Arvind's death is unfortunate," he said, "but we didn't kill him." "Someone who wanted your money did," Rohan said. "Saxena is an idiot," Mathur said. "He was told to negotiate, not to threaten, not to touch. He panicked when Arvind refused to sell. Things escalated." "You were there," Rohan said slowly. "I arrived after," Mathur said. "Saxena called, babbling. I came to see what could be salvaged. By then, Arvind was beyond help." He flexed his right wrist unconsciously. A cufflink glinted. "You lost one upstairs," Rohan said. "In the storeroom. That's why Yadav knows you were there." Mathur sighed. "A small mistake," he said. "We all make them." "In some professions," Rohan said, "those mistakes get people killed." "And in yours," Mathur said, "they get footnotes wrong. Let us not pretend we are in the same line of work." He took a step closer. "Do you have it?" he asked. Rohan's heart thudded. "Yes," he said, "I have it." "Good," Mathur said. "Then we can end this farce. Give it to me. I will ensure it is kept safe. Rao will be satisfied. The police will lose interest. You can go back to Chicago and write a critical edition of some less controversial text. Everyone wins, including the men who think they can decide which stories survive," Rohan said. "Someone will always decide," Mathur said. "If not us, then your government, or ours, or men with guns and WhatsApp groups. At least we have some appreciation for nuance." "You keep using that word," Rohan said. "It doesn't mean what you think it means." Mathur's eyes hardened. "I am offering you a way out," he said. "Do you know how rare that is in situations like this?" "I know you're offering me hush money," Rohan said, "and asking me to become complicit in burying a text that speaks exactly against this kind of quiet power." "You really have been reading it," Mathur said. "Banwari Das was very earnest, wasn't he? All that talk of unpaths and refusal. Charming." "Did you know," Rohan said, "that he wrote it in 1857, in the middle of the uprising, as the British cracked down on anyone carrying anything that looked like a message. He used Dara and Baba Lal as shields to speak about refusing unjust roads. That's more than charming. That's brave. And, Mather said, look how well that worked. The British stayed another 90 years. Your Banwari died in some dusty town. His little tract vanished into a trader's trunk. History is not changed by quaint texts, Professor. It's changed by men with power reading the right things at the right time. Or burning the wrong things, Rohan said. They faced each other, the garden holding its breath. Rohan's fingers itched on the bag strap. In his ear he could hear the faint sound of Yadav's breathing. Not yet, she murmured. Keep him talking. Mather, Rohan said. Why did the ninth dialogue scare you so much? It's obscure. Most people have never heard of it. You could have bought it quietly and donated it to some archive with conditions in 20 years. Why the rush? Why the pressure? Mather hesitated. Because, he said slowly, certain people at certain levels have built their careers on a very particular story of Indian history, one in which men like Dara are fools, traitors, or irrelevant. A text that complicates that too much, at the wrong moment, could unsettle things. Elections, Rohan said. Mather gave him a thin smile. You're not entirely naive, he said. Good, then you understand. Right now, we are in a delicate balance. National narratives are being rewritten. Pillars are being knocked down. Symbols are being swapped out. A saintly Dara who embraces a Hindu ascetic and speaks of unity does not fit easily into certain scripts. Imagine if this text were to be published in the next year with your name attached, with the imprimatur of Western academia. Imagine how it could be used, who would quote it, where, on what stages. Unity isn't exactly divisive, Rohan said. In the right hands, Mather said, anything is divisive. And Rao's patrons do not like surprises. They like to be the ones writing the scripts, not reacting to them. So you would rather turn the ninth dialogue into a private trophy, Rohan said. A conversation between Banwari and your bank account. If necessary, Mather said, or into ash. Ash is very democratic. It belongs to no one. He held out his hand. Give it to me, Professor, he said, or I cannot guarantee what happens next, to you, to your friends, to that earnest boy Amit, to Dr. Siddiqui, who likes meddling in things. We have long arms. Rohan felt something in him, something that had bent and bent, finally decide not to bend anymore. He thought of Banwari writing by lamplight, knowing the British could raid his house, of Dara in his tent, on the eve of execution, still asking questions about oneness, of Khurana slipping the manuscript into his bag with a conspiratorial smile. The ninth path, Baba Lal said in the text, is the path of refusal. Rohan tightened his grip on the bag. No, he said. Mather blinked. Excuse me? No, Rohan repeated. The word surprised him by how solid it felt. I'm not giving it to you, and I'm not letting you decide who gets to read it. Mather's face hardened, muscles tightening like a mask cracking. You think the police can protect you? He hissed. You think Inspector Yadav is a goddess. I know how this game is played. I fund half their heritage programs. In my ear, Rohan said calmly. She's suggesting we both step to the left 2 paces. Apparently the lighting is better for the cameras there. Mather's head jerked. Behind him, under the trees, 2 waiters straightened. The gardener put down his shears. A security guard near the gate spoke into his radio. Devendra! Yadav's voice crackled. Now! The garden exploded into motion. Plainclothes officers converged, badges flashing. One grabbed Mather's wrist, twisting it behind his back with professional efficiency. Another stepped in front of Rohan, shielding him. Dr. Vikram Mathur, Yadav said, emerging from behind a hedge like an avenging accountant. You are under arrest for suspicion of involvement in the murder of Mr. Arvind Khurana, conspiracy to obstruct justice and illegal trade in antiquities. Mather stared at her. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You have no evidence. You have a cufflink and a story some foreign academic tells you. I will be out by morning. I will rent this hotel and have you all serving tea. Those are all crimes too, actually, Yadav said pleasantly. Threatening a police officer, attempting to bribe. Shall I go on? He struggled, but the officers were efficient. You don't understand who you're attacking, he spat. I understand exactly, she said. For the first time in my career, all the footnotes line up with the paperwork. It's very satisfying. She glanced at Rohan. You okay? She asked. He nodded, adrenaline finally flooding his limbs now that danger had passed. Shaky, he said, but in one piece. Good, she said. And the manuscript? In my bag, he said, still intact. Excellent, she said. We'll take custody of it now. Carefully. No ash. Mather, being led away, twisted to look at Rohan. You think you've won, he said. You haven't. Rao is still out there. This changes nothing. Another man will replace me tomorrow. Another foundation. Another logo. Maybe, Rohan said. But Banwari will still be here, and so will his words. Mather spat on the grass. A dead scribe and a bookish professor, he said. You're not exactly a revolution. No, Rohan said. We're just a footnote. He thought of his own book, the chapter on absences, of the line he had written once in a moment of rare purple. Sometimes it is the footnote that kills the king. He met Mather's gaze steadily. And footnotes, he said, tend to stick around. 12. Afterlives. Everything after that had the unreal feel of epilogue. There were statements to give, forms to sign, senior officers to brief. Agra police whisked Mather away to a secure facility. His lawyers arrived within hours, sleek and indignant. Headlines began to sprout online. Cultural Trust director arrested in murder case. Police probe heritage racket. Sanskriti. Heritage Trust released a statement expressing shock and full faith in the law. The ministry distanced itself with bureaucratic grace. Somewhere in Delhi, Rao presumably poured himself another drink and rearranged his pieces. The manuscript, carefully logged and double-bagged, went into a crime branch locker Yadav trusted. For once, she said, I'm going to make sure the paper trail is as clean as your footnotes. In the weeks that followed, the case unfolded in the press in fits and starts. Saxena was picked up in a midnight raid. Under questioning, he broke quickly, eager to shift blame onto Mather, onto unnamed sahibs, onto anyone but himself. His account of the night at the shop more or less matched what Mather had reluctantly admitted. A confrontation gone wrong. A blow meant to intimidate that landed badly. A panicked call, a clean-up attempt. It did not absolve Mather of complicity, but it complicated the narrative. Murders, Yadav said, are like manuscripts, always more hands involved than the colophon admits. Rohan testified via video link from Chicago later, the time difference turning his morning into their night. He described the manuscript, his conversations with Khurana, the phone calls with Rao. The judge seemed simultaneously bemused and intrigued by terms like textual stratigraphy and scribal habits. Months passed. In that time, the digital copy of the 9th dialogue sat on Rohan's hard drive, a secret file labeled blandly Project B. He resisted the urge the first few weeks to open it. He wanted distance, wanted the adrenaline to drain, the fear to detach from the text. When he finally did, on a rainy Chicago afternoon with campus puddles reflecting gray clouds, he found he could read it differently. He saw Banwari not only as a forger or a hero, but as a man in a particular moment, 1857, watching the world burn, reaching for the one story that embodied the unity he thought was being torn apart. That story was Dara and Baba Lal, sitting cross-legged on a carpet, talking about oneness. He wrote an article first. He called it Forging Unity, the 19th century 9th dialogue of Dara Shikoh and Baba Lal. He laid out with academic care the evidence for the manuscript's dating, the peculiar NA formation and other paleographic clues, the Upanishadic quotations matching late printed editions, the marginal note about the year of the uprising. He argued that the text was a 19th century composition, not a Mughal original, but he also argued that this did not make it trivial. It revealed how later Indians had used the past to imagine futures in the face of colonial rule. It spoke to the persistence of a Baba Lal strand of thinking that valued unity over division. It was, in its own way, a kind of resistance. He acknowledged the dangers of misusing such a text, of turning it into a simple proof of some modern political slogan. He urged readers to meet it as a layered, situated voice, not a timeless manifesto. He footnoted meticulously. He sent the draft to Syra. She responded with comments, some snarky, some sharp, all useful. At the end of her email, she wrote, P.S. You managed to make a case involving murder, smuggling, and shady foundations sound like a debate over scribal habits. I'm impressed, also annoyed. He laughed aloud. A few months later, an Indian journal published a Hindi translation of the article, making it accessible to readers who would never see the English-language version. Amit sent him a photo of a JNU reading group. 10 students squeezed into a hostel room, photocopies of the piece on their knees. The ninth path, Amit texted, is apparently also the path of long footnotes, but we like it. As for the manuscript itself, after the case against Mathur and Saxena had progressed far enough that its chain of custody was less legally sensitive, Yadav pushed for its deposit in the National Archives with conditions. It stays in a special collection, she insisted in a meeting, with access for scholars, not locked away. And we digitize it properly. No more one scholar in Chicago hoarding the only copy. She winked when she told Rohan that later. The ministry was surprisingly cooperative, she said. Public scandals make even senior babus crave legitimacy. A nice press release about protecting national heritage helps. The scanned images were eventually made available through a password-protected portal, not widely advertised, but there for those who looked. One day, a thin envelope arrived at Rohan's office in Chicago. The return address was a Delhi police station. Inside was a single photograph, the manuscript lying open in a glass case, its pages held gently by foam supports. Below it, a small placard read, Navam Samvada, Ninth Dialogue, Hindi manuscript, circa 1857 CE. Dialogic composition, imagining a conversation between Mughal Prince Dara Shikoh and Saint Baba Lal. On loan from Delhi Police, case file 47/23. On the back, in Yadav's neat hand, was a single line. Some ghosts get decent housing eventually. He pinned it to his notice board. Years later, when he taught his now famous Dara Shikoh and the Afterlives of Dialogue seminar, he would bring up the ninth dialogue toward the end of the course. He would project one of Banwari's pages on the screen. He would trace, with the beam of a laser pointer, the sloping re, the odd na, the places where 19th century politics leached into a 17th century voice. He would tell the students, briefly, without too much drama, about Arvind Khurana, bookseller in Daryaganj, about a murdered man who knew books were ghosts, not commodities, about a police inspector who liked puzzles and annoyed dangerous men with a calm smile, about a boy named Amit who thought history should embarrass the living, about a friend named Sarah who understood that texts and power were always in bed together. He never mentioned Rao by name. There was no need. The students, living in a world of new jackals and new manuscripts, understood the type. At the end of the semester, he would always ask the same question. Was Banwari Das lying, he would say, when he wrote a ninth dialogue and dated it back to Dara's time? Or was he telling a different kind of truth? The discussions that followed were always messy, passionate, contradictory. He preferred it that way, because if there was anything the ninth dialogue had taught him, it was that history was not about pristine truths or perfect texts. It was about what people did with them when the world was on fire. And somewhere, in a sealed file in the Delhi police archives, Inspector Nandini Yadav occasionally pulled out case 47/23 when she had new recruits to train. This, she would say, tapping the folder, is why you read the documents properly, and why you listen to the bookish ones. Sometimes they know where the bodies are buried. Amit, now an assistant professor at a small university, would bring his students on field trips to Old Delhi. He would stand outside Khurana Antiquarian and Rare Books, now run by a niece who had inherited both the shelves and the stubbornness. He would tell them about an old man who once slipped a manuscript into a stranger's bag and thereby set off a chain of events no one had planned. And that, he would say, is the ninth path no one tells you about in history books. The way quiet people sometimes do reckless things, and how years later those reckless things look like courage. Sometimes late at night, when the noise of Chicago died down to a hum, Rohan would take out his own printed copy of the ninth dialogue and read. He would come again and again to a particular exchange. Dara said, "O Baba, if the path of justice is blocked by mighty ones, what is the seeker to do?" Baba Lal laughed and said, "Then, Prince, do not walk their road. Sit where you are. Dig beneath your own feet until you find another way. The road they do not see is the only one worth taking." On those nights, the ghosts in his office, Dara, Baba Lal, Banwari, Arvind, felt less like burdens and more like company. And somewhere, far away, in a city that had learned to live with both skyscrapers and ruins, a man who called himself Rao read the published article about the ninth dialogue. He poured himself a drink, leaned back, and smiled a thin smile. "Footnotes," he murmured, "are annoying." Then he turned to other files, other texts, other plans, because the trade in ghosts went on, but now at least one ghost had slipped his leash. The ninth dialogue, born in imagination, forged in fear, carried in a stranger's bag, catalogued under Case 47/23, taught in classrooms on 2 continents, was finally where it had always wanted to be, in the hands of people arguing about what it meant.
The river hums a tune so low, stars drip light like molten glow, feet on earth but the soul will fly, chasing whispers of the sky.